NC State is 3-0 heading to Duke this weekend. Hi everyone, Noah Fleischman here, host of the Wolfpacker Show, presented by thewolfpacker.com. We cover NC State for the On3 network. You can join right now for $1 on the website for your first week to get all of your in-depth NC State news and notes, analysis, recruiting scoop, game coverage, and more. So make sure you check us out at thewolfpacker.com. NC State heads to Durham this weekend for a big time clash in ACC play. The Wolfpack have a chance to start 2-0 in league play, both on the road in the first time since the 1960s. Before we dive into that, though, let's give a word to our sponsor, BetMGM. As you know, we've teamed up with them this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make our picks and have a variety of offers for our listeners each and every week. When you join BetMGM, you access a variety of parlay selection features like same game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use bonus code ON3, that's ON and the number 3, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how you do it. Download the BetMGM app on your phone, sign up using the bonus code ON3, that's ON and the number 3. Once you're in, deposit at least $10 and place your wager on anything. It can be on any sport, any game, NFL, college football, whatever you want to do, it's there. You receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you're using the code ON3 when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. Disclaimer, see MGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in the United States. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369 if you're in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP if you're in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 from Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and rounding it out, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with the Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get $1,500 on your first bet offer today. NC State, as I said, 2-0 or 3-0, looking to go 2-0 in league play this weekend at Duke. Let's just recap Wake Forest real quick. NC State goes to Winston-Salem, a place that's been a house of horrors for the past few years. The place was 3-9 since the year 2000. It looked like it was going to be house of horrors from the start. Wake Forest jumps out with a 98-yard touchdown return on the first play of the game, on the opening kickoff. And after that, they go up again 14-0. NC State clawed back, made it 14-14 by the end of the first quarter. Wake, though, jumps back out ahead, 24-14 before NC State kicked a field goal at the end of the half. Once halftime was over, NC State came out like a new team, outscoring Wake Forest 17-0, including holding the Damon Deacons 0 for 7 on third down. They started 6 for 6, so DJ Elliott proven he can make adjustments at halftime. CJ Bailey looked good, 200 yards passing through the air, 3 touchdowns. Hollywood Smothers continues to be one of the best running backs in the country, 164 yards on 24 attempts, almost 7 yards per carry. NC State had some ups and downs. They found a way to win the game. That's all that matters in league play, especially on the road. Wins are not easy to come in this league, especially in Winston-Salem on a Thursday night. Yes, NC State had a lot of people there, but it is what it is. NC State now goes to Duke this weekend. As I said, this is the first time NC State has back-to-back ACC road games open league play in the last 26 years. That happened in 99. Open league play at Florida State and Wake Forest lost both times. The last time NC State won back-to-back ACC road games open league play was 1968, meeting at Wake Forest and at North Carolina. The Wolfpack went on to win the ACC championship. Is it a sign? I don't know. But NC State heads to Durham this weekend to face Darian Mensah and Manny Diaz, along with the rest of the Blue Devils. We caught up with Conor O'Neill. He covers the Demon Deacons and Blue Devils for the On3 Network. You can find his coverage at Devils Illustrated. But let's roll with the conversation and see what he had to say about what he saw at Wake Forest last week and what he expects from Duke this week. And we're joined by Conor O'Neill of Devils Illustrated for the second straight week as we get ready to preview NC State at Duke. Conor, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me back. It's not been a while.
Yeah. We saw NC State on the field last week at Wake Forest come off with a 34-24 win in comeback fashion. What were your initial thoughts of seeing this Wolfpack team for the first time this year?
They yo-yoed around a little bit, that starts with a 98-yard kick return touchdown. And man, Chris Barnes is fast, but he doesn't need two guys to like leave their lanes on a kick return for him to see something and break it. And then probably Wake's best pass of the entire season is the 70-yarder to Chris Barnes to put him in position to score and go up 14 nothing. And it's just kind of like, wow, that's NC State's up against it here. It was impressive to me that they rallied not once but twice from a double-digit deficit, from 14 nothing to 14-14 before the end of the first quarter, and then from 24-14 to getting the field goal before the end of before halftime, and then coming out in the second half and tying it, taking a lead. That's you can caveat that with not thinking Wake is very good, and I'd agree with you, but it's still it's a feather in the cap to do that on the road, to do that at a place where, I guess State probably doesn't have too many players left on the roster who lost in Winston in 21, but a place that has given past State teams some difficulty. So that's a good little building block early in the season.
Yeah, NC State's now 4-9 in Winston-Salem since 2000, so they've
Yeah.
improved. They've won the last two trips. Don't let the Wolfpack get hot, as they say. But now NC State heads to another place where it hasn't really found much success, playing at Duke this weekend. Hasn't won in Durham since 2008. Obviously, they haven't played a ton since 2008, but haven't won since then. Kurt Roper, NC State's offensive coordinator, was the offensive coordinator of that Duke team when NC State left with the win. But Connor, overall, what are just your initial impressions of this new Duke team? 1-2 through the first 3 weeks hasn't really been the start they're looking for.
Yeah, this is a team that had a lot of high expectations of itself coming into the season, and that's where I think, that's the most curious I am about this team right now is how are they handling going from talking about themselves as a team that could compete atop the ACC and be in that upper echelon of teams to you shot yourself in the foot multiple times against Illinois. That was a score that you came away saying, well, it wasn't as lopsided as the score indicated, to then going down to Tulane and having a game where the score wasn't as close as the game indicated, and like the flow of things and how overmatched they were in trying to defend Tulane didn't really show up. So they're reeling a little bit. They've made it clear, like the coaches and players that we've talked to this week have made it clear that they're not panicking, which the the next players or coach or anybody who admits they are panicking will be a first for me. But it's a team that kind of can't get out of its own way right now. And I, sometimes teams can figure that out. Sometimes teams can clean that up and stop making those types of mistakes and play up to their potential. Other times they can't. Other times they're just a flawed team. And we're kind of starting with this week. I mean, the schedule doesn't get any easier for Duke after this one. They have two road trips to extremes of the country. They go to Syracuse and then California. So it's kind of already make or break time for this Duke team.
Yeah, you talk about the self-inflicted, errors. They have 7 turnovers, I believe, this year, 5 fumbles and 2 interceptions. What's been the common theme on giving the ball away?
Yeah, I mean, not all turnovers are created equal. I would say the two interceptions both came facing large deficits with Darian Mensah trying to make something happen when he maybe probably shouldn't have been trying to make that throw. It's not like he's been careless with the ball in the interceptions. Now, I think he's fumbled twice, maybe only one of them's been lost. Um, he's got to have a little bit more awareness when he scrambles, and he's talked to us about that. A couple of the other fumbles are just guys trying to pick up a couple extra yards, and I think that stems from kind of that internal pressure that they've put on themselves of we've got to be perfect. That was One of the main ones against Illinois was Samir Hagan's trying to reach and extend for extra yards after a catch, and it was already like a 20-yard catch. Like the play was successful. You didn't need to put the ball at risk, trying to pick up a few extra yards. Special teams, that's where one of the turnovers comes from. That was a muffed punt that led to Illinois' first points. Their special teams is the S&P rank on SP Plus on ESPN says that they're 56 in the country in special teams. I think most Duke fans would tell you that that is absurd because their special teams have been wildly inconsistent. They've been a disaster in some areas. They put their field goal team on the field 9 times and they've come away with 15 points. They had a field goal attempt at Tulane where they didn't even get a kickoff because the hold was bad. And they had one blocked where a guy just came basically unblocked off the right edge and went right to the kick. It was just the simplest block you've ever seen. So they've got to figure some things out with ball security and with special teams.
Yeah, a lot of things you don't want to be going through at this stage of the season, going to ACC play. But you talked about him a few times. So let's dive into Tulane transfer quarterback Darian Mensah, the guy that is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the country this year. On threes, Pete Nakos reports that he makes about $4 million going into this season. What has been your initial thoughts just on the guy that he is, and were you surprised that they went down to Tulane and weren't able to pick up the win in a place that he's pretty comfortable at?
Um, my thoughts are he is an upgrade over Malik Murphy. I've tried to explain it this way to people. The ones who just look at Malik's stats and measurables and recruiting pedigree think it's wild for Duke to say essentially thanks, but no thanks in terms of we don't want you to be our quarterback next year, or at least if you're still on our roster next year, you're going to compete for the starting job. Um, if you watched Duke play games last year, like if you watched full Duke football games last year, you would have thought it was wild to have Malik Murphy come back as the anointed starting quarterback. Like he was just wildly inconsistent. He had 12 interceptions. He would yin and yang throughout the game a couple times where one quarter he'd look like a future NFL pick, the next quarter he'd look like the version of Jamarcus Russell that was playing for the Raiders. He's a slow-footed, immobile quarterback. He can throw the hell out of the ball, but in 2025, that doesn't get it done at the quarterback position. You have to do a lot of other things, and Darian does a lot of those other things. He scrambles, he keeps plays alive to pass. That's a big point of emphasis for me because got a couple people already with Duke asking if they were sold a bill of goods and saying that Darian doesn't run the ball as much as they thought he would. It's like, if you dive into the PFF numbers, I think they credit him with like 250 rushing yards at Tulane last year. 221 were on scrambles. Like he's not a designed run type of guy. He's a scramble and he's a scramble to throw. He's not a first two reads aren't there and he's tucking it and running after 3 seconds. He's gonna scramble and try to find somebody down the field. Um, he's very poised and calm. I had a chance to sit down with him before the season and do a feature story on him. We've gotten him a couple times already in both post game and we talked to him before the Tulane game. Very well spoken, very humble. He's kind of got he's from California and he's kind of got this like California vibe of not ever getting too high or too low, which every coach I've ever heard talk about quarterbacks, that's one of the things they value most is never getting too high or low. So he's been a very good addition for this team.
For sure, you talk about him scrambling and making plays. Through the first 3 games, he's got 40 dropbacks that he's left the pocket on. He's attempted 35 passes outside the pocket this year. So it's a lot in 3 games of play. But he's a guy that's going to create some headaches for NC State's defense. Speaking of defense, Manny Diaz is known for being a defensive coach. Duke's defense though this year isn't kind of up to par where it's been the past couple years so far. What's been the biggest, concern in your eyes just on this defense that ranks third worst in rush defense and it's middle of the pack and on the passing side?
They keep giving up third and longs. And they gave up like one third and 20. They gave up a 44-yard run on a draw against Elon. And it was, I think, the fourth possession of the game when they had already gotten them with three and outs, or maybe one of them had one first down. But since then, it's just been this little bleeding of Illinois had, I think, a third and 21 screen where Duke brought the house to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands early and got the ball out of the quarterback's hands early, and then there's nobody there to tackle him. They had lead blockers set up, and that was a huge play in that game. Um, they gave up a couple third and longs against Tulane. Like one of the one that comes to mind is they had a third and 10 early second half when it was only a touchdown difference, and Tulane threw a check down pass, and Duke had two chances to make a tackle and just didn't. And their third down defense needs some work right now. They're not getting off the field nearly as much as they need to be, and they're frustrated by it. They're I mean, not panicked, but I think it's a point of concern at this point. They've got to figure out the tweaks because they have two elite defensive ends. Like Vincent Anthony Jr. and Wesley Williams are elite pass rushers, and they're not bad against the run. The run defense stuff usually like Jake Retzlaff killed them on zone reads and that kind of thing. They have not been hurt by many like straight up running back getting a handoff and doing stuff to him. It's all been in these fluky situations where maybe you wouldn't expect a run, or it's a quarterback run or a zone read, that type of thing. So they've got to adjust and they've got to know how teams are going to attack them given they have some elite pass rushers. Like it's kind of a losing proposition for a team to take a 5 or 7 step drop on a third and long and just basically say, "Come and get us" to two elite guys on the edge.
Definitely. You talk about Jake Retzlaff, 17 carries, 111 yards, four rushing touchdowns last week. Does that concern you with the fact of after you watched, what NC State was able to do on the ground at Wake Forest, run for over 200 yards last 2 weeks? And CJ Bailey isn't Jake Retzlaff, but he can run a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and Hollywood Smothers is much better than any running back Tulane had on the field, and probably any running back Illinois has. So there's got to be some concern. There's got to be, Duke can't fall into thinking because we were good against the run with Illinois and Tulane, we're going to be good against NC State. This is probably a better run offense than Duke has seen in the past couple weeks. So that's, I mean, I've written the section on Hollywood Smothers in my preview already that'll be up in a couple days. Yeah, and the other thing with Duke's defense is their tackling has been pretty poor, and that was not the case last year. They were a very good tackling team. They've been a really good tackling team pretty much for 3 years when you go back and count 2 years with Mike Elko and then last year with Manny. So their tackling issues, that's really concerning against a guy like Hollywood Smothers. So I think PFF has him as the tied for the fifth most missed tackles forced in the country.
Yeah, he's forced 20 missed tackles as a ball carrier and a few as a receiver. He does it all over the place. He leads the ACC in that stat. When we look at this game, Connor, what is something that Duke needs to do other than score more points than NC State to come out with the win and kind of right the ship a little bit this weekend?
Part of it, and it's something I haven't really touched on yet, Duke needs to score touchdowns early. They've been in this mode of, I think the first two games, their first possession resulted in a field goal, and I think their first possession against Tulane was a three and out, and then the second one might have been a field goal attempt that was missed after they false started twice. Um, Duke has got to push. Duke is explosive offensively in between the 20s, but they have not been as good in the red zone. And it's just this snowball effect of when the offense doesn't score touchdowns or when when it's sputtering, the defense goes out there and feels like they have to get a stop, so then they don't get a stop because they don't get off the field on third down or something. And it's kind of been it's only been 2 games, but it's been in this comedy of, or not comedy, but it's like I said, the snowball effect of feeling like they're kind of collapsing under the expectations, and they're not starting the game, up 14-3 after a quarter or something like that. So I think the key to this being a win for Duke to kind of right the ship of their season is scoring touchdowns early and actually playing with a lead. That would, I think that would go as good of a boon as that would be on the scoreboard. I think it would go even further for what it would mean on the sidelines for Duke. Like I think it would be a little bit of a extra confidence boost, an extra like shot of, hey, it's a lot easier of a game, and like our team is a little bit better conditioned and built to play from in front of people.
Kind of ironic. NC State dealing with the same issue, playing from behind the last 2 weeks, has been able to come out on the other side of things with second half comebacks, second half defense being really, really good. Connor, before we get out of here, where can people, find your work about Duke going into this weekend's game?
Yeah, Devils Illustrated is part of the On3 network. The website address is on3.com/sites/devils-illustrated slash. I believe it's still, if you just type in duke.rivals.com, it'll take you to the place where you need to be. But if you just type Duke on three or Devils Illustrated or any combination of those, you'll get to the spot and I'll have coverage up all week.
Awesome. I appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks, Noah.
And the Connor O'Neill joined the podcast for the second straight week. NC State, as we all know, heads to Duke this weekend. The Wolfpack are now a 3.5 point favorite here on Thursday morning, thanks to our friends at BetMGM. The line has moved 1 point in Duke's favor as they get set to play there. NC State, do I think they can find a way to win that game? I do. I do. I'm really confident in this Wolfpack team right now. I think a lot more confident than I would have been at the beginning of the season going into this game. Just the way that Duke hasn't really impressed. They're 1-2. They've lost their two Power Four or games against FBS opponents, including one against Illinois, where they should have honestly won the game, and they didn't because they can't get out of their own way. Will they fix that this week? I don't know. I don't think so though. So I'll take the Wolfpack. To not only cover the spread, will win outright. My final score prediction is 24-17. Wolfpack over the Blue Devils. Before we get out of here, I want to thank our friends over at Roback. I'm rocking a Roback sweatshirt right now, as I always do on the pod. There's only one way to describe Roback. It's best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Roback, they're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. They've got so many new items out right now, including their new licensed game day collection, and it's a fan favorite. They have novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and quarter zip options for some of your favorite schools. It's worth checking out. NC State does have a big collection on there, so if you're an NC State fan, don't miss out. Nobody else on the market has pairing of these level custom designs with quality activewear. You can save 20% on your entire purchase, new customers only, with the code NCS20. That's NCS20 to save 20% off your entire purchase, new customers only at roback.com. So that'll do it for this week's episode. NC State men's soccer, I do need to mention, #2 in the country. They get set to play at Boston College on Friday. The Wolfpack are led by Donovan Phillip and his nation-leading 10 goals. He scored 4 in 28 minutes against William Mary this week. The Wolfpack remains undefeated and hasn't allowed a goal all season. One of 3 teams in the entire country, the only power conference team in the United States that has not given up a goal. So we'll check back in with them next week. I've got some fun stuff coming with soccer on the site next week, as well as all the coverage from NC State at Duke. You can follow us at thewolfpacker.com. Tune in because it's going to be a fun weekend ahead. We have plenty of coverage coming from Durham. I'll see you guys back here on Sunday afternoon to recap what happened in Wallace Wade Stadium. For now, we'll see you later.